One cured meat is played like a violin, another is pork fat dipped in chocolate, and the most expensive can cost thousands. This is every cured meat explained. First up, culatello di zibello. Italians call it the king of cured meats, and they mean it, literally. It only gets made in 7 towns along the Po River in Emilia-Romagna, and only between November and February, because the winter fog rolling off the river counts as much of an ingredient as the salt. Without it, the meat won't cure right. Producers take a 20-kilo pork thigh, carve out just the best inner muscle, stuff it inside a pig's bladder, tie it into a pear shape, and age it for at least 10 months. Only 6 or 7 kilos of that thigh survive as finished culatello. It's been protected since 1996. Giuseppe Verdi made and gave away his own, and a single leg can run over €100 a kilo. Slicing it with a machine is treated like a crime. While the king aged in fog 500 miles south, a peasant sausage was quietly becoming Italy's spiciest export. That peasant sausage is nduja. In a tiny village called Spalinga, at the toe of Italy's boot in Calabria, they make something that looks like nothing else in a butcher's case. Soft, blood red, and completely spreadable, like a jar of Nutella made out of spicy pork. Locals call it red Nutella and poor man's Viagra because the chili peppers inside are loaded with vitamin E. The name likely traces back to the French word andouille, brought over during Napoleon's occupation in the early 1800s. Born out of pure poverty, the recipe mixes cheap cuts, jowl, belly, lung, intestine with pork fat and sun-dried Calabrian chilies stuffed into casing. Those chilies do more than add heat. They're a natural preservative, which is why nduja needs no chemical additives at all. In 2009, the New York Times called it the Lady Gaga of pork products. Today, it shows up on pizza, pasta, and toast worldwide. One Italian cured meat gets even weirder than a spreadable sausage because it's made from pure fat. That pure fat meat is lardo di colonnata, pork fat back aged inside tubs carved from solid Carrara marble, the same marble Michelangelo used to sculpt David. That's lardo di colonnata, from a village high in Tuscany's Apuan Alps, founded around 40 BC as a Roman colony to house marble quarry slaves. The recipe hasn't changed much since. Producers layer a thick slab of pork back fat from a pig weighing at least 160 kilos into a marble basin rubbed with garlic, then bury it in salt, rosemary, pepper, cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves, and let it rest in a cool cave for at least 6 months. The European Union once tried to ban the marble tubs on hygiene grounds and force producers onto aluminum until studies proved the salty brine inside the marble kills germs better than metal does. Tradition 1. Quarrymen used to eat it thin on bread with tomatoes. Another mountain village nearby cures its meat into the shape of a violin. That violin-shaped meat is violino di capra. Goat violin, that's the literal translation, and it's not just a cute name. In the Valchiavenna Valley of northern Lombardy near the Swiss border, farmers cure whole goat legs into the exact shape of a violin's neck. At dinner, someone rests it against their shoulder, slices it with the knife moving like a bow, and passes it around the table. Local poet Giovanni Bertacci gave it the name in the late 1800s in a poem about a wandering musician handing out slices to a village. The legs weigh 1.5 to 3.5 kilos, cured in garlic, spices, and red wine, then aged for months inside stone caves called croti. The taste, gamey, chewy, a little wild. Just a few valleys away, one Italian cured meat is quietly responsible for the greatest pasta sauce ever invented. That pasta sauce ingredient is guanciale. It's salt-cured pork jowl, named after the Italian word for cheek, which also happens to be the word for a pillow. You lay your cheek on it. It's why authentic Roman pasta hits differently than the American versions. It's the actual fat behind carbonara, amatriciana, and the oldest of them all, gricia. Guanciale runs roughly 70% fat, and that fat melts into a clear, sweet, almost floral oil that clings to hot pasta and blends with egg yolks and pecorino into carbonara's silky sauce. Pancetta, the bacon everyone tries to swap in, is much leaner. The fat melts too fast, and the sauce breaks. The first published carbonara recipe, printed in La Cucina Italiana in August 1954, actually called for pancetta. Guanciale didn't take over until the 1960s. It's rubbed with salt and pepper, air-cured for 3 weeks to 3 months, and never smoked. The cured meat sitting in the mountain caves just north of there breaks every Italian rule at once. That rule breaker is spec alto adige. Salt curing versus smoking, Spec Alto Adige refused to pick a side. In South Tyrol, where Italy meets Austria, the Italians brought the salt cure, and the Austrians brought the smoke. And locals still sum up the result in one line: a little salt, a little smoke, a lot of fresh air. Prosciutto isn't smoked at all, and even German speck, which shares the name, is really just a broad term for cured pork, fat, or bacon. Not the same product, so this one sits in its own category. The word shows up in butcher regulations as far back as the 1200s, when farmers used it to preserve pork slaughtered around Christmas. A pork thigh gets deboned, split in half, dry cured for 3 weeks in a secret family blend of salt, pepper, juniper, bay, and rosemary, then cold smoked, over beech and juniper before aging around 5 more months. The Recla family in Alto Adige has been curing meat since 1620. A completely different animal, fed almost nothing but acorns, built the priciest ham on earth. That different animal built Jamón Ibérico de Bellota. The Iberian pig is a black-hoofed animal that roams free across the oak forests of southern Spain, and everything about this ham comes down to what it eats. Every October through February, farmers turn the pigs loose into the Dehesa oak pastures, where each one eats 10 to 12 kilos of acorns a day, nearly doubling its body weight before slaughter. Those acorns are packed with oleic acid, the same heart-healthy fat found in olive oil, which is why the fat melts on your tongue. During acorn season, the pigs walk about 9 miles a day hunting for food, more than double their summer reign. And that movement marbles fat straight into the muscle. Since 2014, Spain color codes every leg. Black label means 100% pure Iberico, acorn-fed, aged at least 36 months. That leg can run thousands of euros, sliced paper thin by hand, and never served cold. One Spanish cured meat is so soft, you can spread it like butter. That spreadable meat is soppressata. Spread it straight from the casing onto bread like butter. That's how Mallorcans eat soppressata, a soft, deep red cured sausage unlike almost anything else in cured meat. It's made from the Mallorcan black pig, porc negre, and the name traces back to a Sicilian word meaning pressed or minced. The recipe dates to medieval times, but everything changed in the 1600s when paprika crossed the Atlantic from the Americas. The sausage went from plain and pale to bright orange red overnight, and the paprika added both flavor and preservation. The best versions use a local paprika called tap de corti. Producers grind pork and pork fat with paprika, salt, and pepper, stuff it into casing, and cure it at around 10 degrees Celsius for 1 to 8 months. In summer, people spread it raw on toast. In winter, they cook it into stews. And for the real Mallorcan version, they drizzle it with honey. One Spanish sausage is stuffed inside a body part most people wouldn't dare eat. That sausage is Botillo del Bierzo. El Bierzo, in northwest Spain, not for the squeamish. Producers take smoked pork ribs and bone-in tail meat, mix in paprika, garlic, and salt, and stuff it all inside a pig's cecum, a pouch off the gut. The name comes from the Latin botellus, meaning sausage or intestine, and the recipe might trace back to Rome itself. A similar version shows up in Apicius, the ancient Roman cookbook from the 1st century AD. Locals also link it to the Celtic slaves who worked the nearby Roman gold mines of Las Medulas. It's never sliced. You boil the whole thing for 2 hours per kilo, then gnaw it hot off the bone in winter, paired with cacellos, boiled potatoes, cabbage, and a glass of Mencia, red wine. One cured meat comes with a legend about a Turkic warrior curing beef under his saddle while riding into battle. That legendary beef is basturma. Across Armenia, Turkey, and the former Ottoman world, basturma is a heavily spiced, air-dried, cured beef with a legend attached. The most famous origin story says nomadic Turkic horsemen would salt slabs of beef, wedge them under their saddles, and let the horses' sweat and constant pounding cure the meat as they rode. The name comes from Turkish basturma, meaning to press. Historians think it's a great story, and probably a myth. The real credit goes to Armenians in Kayseri, back when it was still called Caesarea in the Byzantine era, who perfected the recipe so thoroughly that Basturmagian, meaning basturma maker, became an Armenian surname. The finished beef gets slathered in a paste called chemin, fenugreek, garlic, cumin, paprika, which keeps insects and mold away, while it air dries for weeks. Sultan Mehmet II reportedly broke his Ramadan fast with basturma and eggs. The same word evolved into pastrami in New York delis. Thousands of miles south in South Africa, another dried beef carries an almost identical saddle myth. That South African version is biltong. Thick strips of dried vinegar-cured spiced beef or game, kudu, springbok, ostrich, with a name straight from Dutch meaning rump strip. That's biltong. The same saddle myth from Basterma sticks to it too. It's wrong. The Khoikhoi people were salting and drying meat strips thousands of years before Europeans arrived, and horses were far too rare in the region for saddle curing anything. When Dutch settlers landed in the 1650s, they added vinegar from newly planted Cape vineyards, saltpeter, coriander, black pepper, and cloves, and biltong was born. It fueled the Voortrekkers on the Great Trek in the 1830s, the Boer commandos through the Boer War, and South African troops on the Western Front in World War I. The signature spice is coriander, and there's real science behind it. A 2017 University of Beira interior study found coriander oil kills nearly every foodborne bacteria they tested. One Alpine dried beef once made a Swiss finance minister completely lose it in parliament. That Alpine dried beef is Bündnerfleisch. Every other Alpine cured meat gets smoked. Bündnerfleisch from the Swiss canton of Graubünden never touches smoke at all. Producers take beef from the shoulder or upper thigh, trim off every trace of fat and sinew, cure it in salt, wine, and juniper for 3 to 5 weeks near freezing, then air dry it at around 10 degrees. Workers press it over and over during drying, which is why the finished block ends up in that flat brick shape. It loses about half its water weight, which is why it stays shelf-stable without any chemical preservatives. On September 20th, 2010, this meat became famous outside Switzerland. During question time in the Swiss parliament, Finance Minister Hans Rudolf Merz stood up to read a dry legal reply about Bündnerfleisch import rules, cracked halfway through, and completely lost it, laughing on camera. The video hit over 1 million YouTube views within days. Bündnerfleisch is sliced almost transparent and served with raclette or in soup. One Croatian sausage is so labor-intensive that a single pig yields only a handful of them. That labor-intensive sausage is kulen. Two things set it apart from every other cured meat. The original recipe contains no black pepper at all. Every bit of heat and color comes from Hungarian-style hot red paprika. And traditional farms only use the pig's largest intestines and its best cuts, so a single slaughtered pig yields just a handful of finished kulen, which is why it was historically saved for weddings. Producers use pork from Black Slavonian or Mangalica pigs, minimum 180 kilos. Mince it with paprika and garlic, stuff it into thick pork intestine, cold smoke it over beech or hornbeam for weeks, then age it 3 to 9 more months. In Slavonia, farmers still hang the sausages on grapevines every St. Vincent's Day and sprinkle them with wine and holy water for luck. In 2015, Baranski kulen became the first Croatian food ever protected under EU rules. Over in China, one cured ham's history stretches back over 1,000 years. That ham with the 1,000-year history is Jinhua ham. Zhejiang province in eastern China holds the oldest cured ham in the country, with records going back over 1,000 years to the Tang dynasty. The Southern Song Emperor Gaozong once received a gift ham so deep red he named it Huotui, fire leg, still what Chinese speakers call it today. Legend says Marco Polo carried the technique back to Europe after seeing it made in Jinhua. Traditionally, it comes from a breed called the two ends black, or panda pig, with a black head and rump and a white middle. Producers only start curing once the air drops below 10 degrees Celsius, salting the leg 6 times across 8 to 10 months. Ham masters train for 10 to 15 years to get it right. In 1915, Jinhua ham won first prize at the Panama Pacific Exposition. Chinese cooks never slice it raw. They use it to flavor stocks, and the legendary dish, Buddha, jumps over the wall. Elsewhere in China, an entire style of sausage is named after wax. That wax sausage is lap cheong. The name is a pun before it's anything else. In Cantonese, lap sounds almost identical to the word for wax, exactly what the shiny casing looks like once it's air-dried. Lap is also the word for the winter lunar month when families traditionally slaughter pigs, so the layered meaning turned lap cheong, this sweet and savory dried Chinese pork sausage from southern China, into a symbol of prosperity during Chinese New Year. It's even the reason dachshunds are called lachangu, in Mandarin, sausage dogs. Early sausage-making techniques were documented in a Chinese encyclopedia called the Qimen Yao Shu around 544 AD, though lapcheong as we know it today didn't take shape until centuries later. Producers mix pork and pork fat 2-to-1, add sugar, soy sauce, rose wine or Shaoxing wine, and salt, then color it with red yeast rice before air drying for a couple of weeks. Steamed on top of rice, the fat drips down and glazes every grain. One more cured meat is so strange, it barely counts as meat to most people. This next cure is salo. Cured slabs of pure pork fat, almost no meat attached. Ukrainians treat salo as a national symbol the way Italians treat pasta. Producers salt fat back from the shoulder or belly, dry or in brine, sometimes smoke it, then rub it with garlic, pepper, and coriander. It stuck around for a reason. Pigs couldn't work fields like cattle, so they were raised purely for eating. And because Islamic law forbids pork, they were the one animal Muslim Crimean raiders wouldn't steal during Ottoman raids. The humble pig kept people fed for centuries. In Lviv, a restaurant called the Salo Museum now serves salo sushi, salo ice cream, and salo dipped in chocolate, nicknamed Ukraine's Snickers. In the 2000s, an Odessa candy factory sold real salo chocolates as an April Fool's joke. People kept buying them. Ukrainians still slice it thin on dark rye with raw garlic and a shot of vodka. If you want more food history like this, hit subscribe, leave a like, and share this video with a friend. It genuinely helps our channel grow. See you soon.